Have you ever wondered why some people generate instant attraction without even opening their mouth? In the next few minutes, you'll discover 3 gestures that unleash intense passion and can completely transform your personal magnetism. What you're about to learn won't just change how others perceive you, but also how you feel about yourself. Attraction doesn't happen by accident. People who magnetize others have mastered a silent language that communicates power, mystery, and confidence without saying a single word. Neil Strauss, after years studying the psychology of seduction, discovered that it's not what you say, but how you occupy space that really matters. And this begins with the first gesture, the sustained gaze. Most people don't know how to look at others. They look nervously, avert their gaze, or look down when someone observes them. And that simple gesture communicates insecurity, communicates that you don't feel comfortable in your own skin. Neil Strauss discovered that truly magnetic people have mastered the art of the sustained gaze, but not just any gaze. A gaze that penetrates beyond the superficial. When you look someone directly in the eyes for 1 second longer than is socially comfortable, something changes in the dynamic. It's not an invasive or intimidating look, but a confident gaze that says, "I am completely present with you in this moment." Most people live in a constant state of distraction, looking at their phones, thinking about 1,000 things while pretending to listen. But when you hold your gaze with tranquility, you're telling the other person, "I really see you." Have you noticed how you feel when someone looks at you this way? Like you're the only person in the world? Neil Strauss calls it the triangular gaze effect. You look at the left eye for a second, then the right, and finally briefly down to the lips before returning to the eyes. This triangular pattern communicates interest without words, creates tension, and generates an immediate connection that few people know how to establish. Here's a simple exercise you can start practicing today. The next time you talk to someone, maintain eye contact for 1 second longer than feels comfortable. Don't force anything. Just observe how the energy of the conversation changes. You'll notice that the other person feels more heard, more valued, and of course more attracted to you. Repeat this phrase. My gaze communicates confidence and total presence. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, this is the perfect time to do so. We provide content like this every week to help you master the social skills that nobody taught you, and that make the difference between being ordinary or extraordinary. And from what we just talked about, how the gaze can create instant connection, we move to the second powerful gesture, one that very few people master: conscious control of space. Neil Strauss observed something fascinating during his years of research. People with greater power of attraction have a different relationship with physical space. They don't move nervously, they're not in a hurry. They occupy space as if it belonged to them. This doesn't mean being arrogant or invasive, but moving with a deliberate presence that communicates confidence. Think about it for a moment. Have you ever observed someone enter a place and automatically attract all eyes? It's not their clothes, it's not necessarily their physique, it's how they move. Their movements are fluid, controlled, almost as if time moved at their pace and not the other way around. While most people rush, stumble over their own words and gestures, magnetic people seem to float in slow motion. Neil Strauss describes it perfectly when he says that the speed at which you move communicates your inner state. Quick, nervous, and poorly controlled movements signal anxiety and insecurity. Deliberate, measured, and fluid movements communicate power and self-control. And here's the key. Passion isn't awakened by desperation, but by the feeling of being in front of someone who has control over themselves. How can you apply this in your daily life? Start by being aware of your tempo. When you enter a place, do it 20% slower than usual. Don't rush to sit down, to speak, or to take out your phone. Take a moment to observe the space, to feel your presence in it. When you speak, make deliberate pauses between your phrases. Silence, well utilized, is one of the most powerful tools of persuasion. Perform this exercise. The next time you're in a social situation, mentally count to 3 before responding to any question. It seems simple, even trivial, but those 3 seconds completely change how you're perceived. You're no longer someone anxious to respond, to fill the silence. You become someone who values their words, who thinks before speaking. And believe me, in a world where everyone speaks without thinking, whoever thinks before speaking instantly becomes more attractive. I'm sure you're already thinking about situations where you could apply this, right? Maybe in that important meeting, on that date you've been waiting for, or simply in your next social interaction. The way you occupy space changes the way you're perceived and, most importantly, changes how you feel about yourself. And if this content is proving valuable to you, help us share it with more people. Sometimes the simple gesture of hitting share can transform the life of someone who needs to hear exactly what we're saying here today. And from this control of space and time, we move to the third gesture that unleashes intense passion, one that is rarely mentioned, but that Neil Strauss considers fundamental: calibrated touch. Most people don't know how to touch. Either they completely avoid physical contact for fear of seeming invasive, or they do it in a clumsy, insecure, or inappropriate way. The result is the same. They lose one of the most powerful tools of human connection. Neil Strauss talks extensively about social touch as an art that can establish connection, trust, and attraction when done correctly. Calibrated touch is not romantic or sexual in nature. It's brief contact, appropriate to the context, that communicates confidence and establishes a subtle physical connection. It can be a light touch on the forearm during a conversation to emphasize a point, a brief shoulder contact when laughing at a shared joke, or the momentary brush of hands when passing an object. What makes this gesture so powerful is its rarity. In our increasingly digital society, meaningful physical contact has become scarce. People spend hours interacting through screens, and when they're finally in front of someone, they don't know how to establish that physical bridge that connects at a basic human level. Neil Strauss points out that the right touch can communicate in seconds what words would take hours to express. Have you noticed how a simple physical contact can completely change an interaction? Think about the last time someone lightly touched your arm during a conversation. Did you notice how that simple gesture created a feeling of closeness, of complicity? That's not a coincidence. Studies have shown that appropriate physical contact releases oxytocin, the hormone related to trust and connection. But here comes the crucial part that Neil Strauss emphasizes and that most people overlook: calibration. The touch must be appropriate to the established level of intimacy, the social context, and the signals the other person is giving off. A poorly calibrated touch can ruin the connection, while a well-executed one can elevate it to a new level. Here's a practical exercise. In your next 3 social interactions, incorporate a brief and appropriate touch when emphasizing something important in the conversation. It can be as simple as a light touch on the forearm for 1 or 2 seconds. Observe how the dynamic changes, how the connection deepens. And remember this mantra: my touch is safe, appropriate, and meaningful. Are you noticing the pattern here? Each of these gestures shares something fundamental: conscious presence. They're not techniques for manipulation. They're ways of being more present, more connected, more attentive to real human interaction. And that, paradoxically, is what generates authentic attraction. Now, these 3 gestures are powerful on their own, but when you combine them, something extraordinary happens. Imagine maintaining a sustained gaze, moving with deliberate presence in space, and using calibrated touch at the precise moment. You've created a magnetic presence that few people possess and that naturally awakens interest and attraction. But there's a 4th element that Neil Strauss mentions and that few truly understand: the vital importance of internal congruence. It doesn't matter how well you execute these gestures if internally you're insecure, anxious, or pretending to be someone you're not. Congruence is when your external gestures genuinely reflect your internal state. Most people try to act with confidence without really feeling secure. They try to maintain eye contact while internally they're anxious. They try to move calmly while their mind races at 1,000 miles per hour. And that conflict between the internal and the external is precisely what destroys attraction. People may not articulate exactly what's wrong, but they feel the incongruence. They feel that something doesn't add up. Neil Strauss expresses it perfectly when he says that real attraction doesn't come from what you do, but from who you are while you do it. Gestures are just the external expression of an internal state. If internally you're calm, present, and confident, these gestures will flow naturally. If you're trying to pretend, they'll feel forced and artificial. How do you develop that internal congruence? Start by working on your internal dialogue. The next time you find yourself in a social situation, observe the thoughts that arise. Are you worried about what others think? Are you anxious to impress? Are you constantly comparing yourself to others? These thought patterns sabotage your presence and therefore your attractiveness. Instead, practice this exercise. Before any important interaction, take 3 deep breaths and mentally repeat, "I'm completely present in this moment. I don't need to impress anyone. My value doesn't depend on external approval." This simple ritual can completely change your internal state and, by extension, how you perceive yourself and how you're perceived. Congruence isn't about pretending to have confidence, but about cultivating a genuine comfort with who you are. And paradoxically, when you stop trying to impress, when you stop desperately seeking approval, that's when you become more magnetic. Neil Strauss discovered this after years of research. The most attractive people aren't the ones who try hardest to be attractive, but those who are most comfortable with themselves. If this video is proving useful to you, this is the perfect time to give it a like and activate the notification bell. Every week we share content like this to help you develop extraordinary social skills that transform all your relationships. And from this internal congruence, we move to the 5th and perhaps most powerful element that Neil Strauss emphasizes: the art of total presence. In a world of constant distractions, the ability to be completely present has become the ultimate social superpower. When was the last time you felt that someone was completely present with you? Not checking their phone, not thinking about what they're going to say next, not scanning the room looking for someone more interesting to talk to. Just present, listening with their whole being as if nothing else existed in that moment. Rare, right? Neil Strauss describes presence as the ultimate aphrodisiac. When you're totally present with someone, you're giving them the most valuable gift, your undivided attention. In an era where attention has become the scarcest currency, offering your complete presence is an act of extraordinary generosity that naturally generates attraction. Total presence manifests in every aspect of your communication. It shows in how you listen without interrupting, in how you respond to what the person is really saying and not what you assume they're saying. It shows in how you remember details from previous conversations, demonstrating that you were really present. It shows in how your face genuinely reflects the emotions of the conversation, in how your body is completely oriented toward the person you're talking to. Have you noticed how you feel when someone really listens to you? Not just waiting for their turn to speak, but absorbing every word, every nuance of what you're communicating. There's an almost magnetic feeling of connection, right? That's presence in action, and it's incredibly attractive because it's incredibly rare. Most people are perpetually distracted, dividing their attention between multiple stimuli, never completely here nor there. According to Neil Strauss, this constant distraction is one of the main reasons why so many people feel socially inept or unattractive. It's not that they're lacking something, it's that they're never completely present to offer it. Here's a transformative exercise you can practice immediately. In your next conversation, commit 100% of your attention to the person in front of you. Put your phone away, not just face down. That still communicates that something else might be more important. Put it away completely. Orient your body completely toward the person. Listen to understand, not to respond. And when the person speaks, pay attention not only to their words, but to what's behind those words. Their emotions, their motivations, their unexpressed needs. Repeat this mantra before each important interaction. In this moment, nothing is more important than the person in front of me. The difference you'll notice will be amazing, both in how you feel during the interaction and in how the other person responds to you. And here's the profound revelation that Neil Strauss discovered after years studying the psychology of attraction. External gestures are just the reflection of an internal state. The sustained gaze, the control of space, the calibrated touch, congruence, and total presence aren't techniques that you can mechanically apply. They're natural manifestations of someone who is centered, present, and comfortable with themselves. Do you see the pattern that emerges here? Everything that really generates lasting and authentic attraction comes from within. It's not about what you do, but who you are while you do it. It's not about techniques, but presence. It's not about words, but energy. This leads us to a truth that few want to hear, but that everyone needs to understand. Becoming a magnetic person requires internal work, not just learning some external tricks. It requires developing a healthy relationship with yourself, cultivating a conscious presence, and living from a place of authenticity. Neil Strauss experienced it firsthand. He started looking for techniques, lines, and strategies, but eventually discovered that the real transformation didn't occur when he mastered what to say, but when he changed who he was, not when he learned to fake confidence, but when he developed real confidence in himself. And this is perhaps the most valuable lesson we can extract from his work. The gestures that generate intense passion aren't tricks that you can learn and mechanically apply. They're natural expressions of an internal state of presence, confidence, and authenticity. It's not about learning to act a certain way, but about becoming the type of person who naturally acts that way. Now, what does this mean for you? It means that the path to becoming someone magnetic isn't through superficial techniques, but through genuine personal development. It's not about learning to fake interest, but about cultivating authentic curiosity. It's not about appearing confident, but about building true comfort with yourself. And here's a liberating truth. You don't need to be perfect to be magnetic. In fact, perfection often repels rather than attracts because it feels unattainable, inhuman. What attracts is authenticity, calibrated vulnerability, the willingness to show yourself as you really are while continuing to grow and evolve. The last exercise I want to share with you is perhaps the most powerful of all. It's called the Minute of Presence, and it can completely transform how you feel and how you're perceived. Before any important interaction, take a minute to center yourself. Close your eyes, breathe deeply, and ask yourself, who do I want to be in this interaction? What energy do I want to bring to this space? Not from acting, but from authenticity. Visualize your best version. Present, attentive, generous, confident. Feel those qualities in your body. And then, from that state, enter the interaction. If you've made it this far, it's because you really care about developing yourself, growing, and becoming your best version. And that, by itself, already places you on a path that few choose to travel. Most prefer to blame circumstances, genetics, luck, everything except taking responsibility for their own growth. Now that you know these three subtle gestures that provoke intense passion, the sustained gaze, the conscious control of space, and the calibrated touch, and the two internal factors that empower them, internal congruence and total presence, you have extraordinarily powerful tools in your hands. But knowledge without action is just entertainment. For these ideas to truly transform your life, you need to integrate them, practice them, make them part of who you are. And that begins with a commitment. I want you to comment below with this declaration. I choose to cultivate total presence in each interaction. My attention is my most valuable gift, and I choose to give it consciously. This simple act of publicly declaring your intention will create a level of commitment that will drive your transformation. And if this video has been valuable to you, make sure to subscribe, activate the notification bell, and share it with someone who might benefit from this knowledge. Sometimes, the simple act of sharing valuable information can change the trajectory of someone's life. Remember, true passion isn't provoked with tricks or techniques, but with authentic presence. It's not something you do, it's something you are. And when you cultivate that presence, that authenticity, that internal congruence, you naturally become someone who awakens not just passing interest, but deep and lasting attraction. The choice is yours. You can continue as before, or you can commit to this path of transformation. A path that will not only change how others perceive you, but more importantly, how you perceive yourself.